When you look at scripture and the Bible talks about the diversity of the body of Christ and his creation, and all of us are necessary and needed, and all the parts of the body, though very different, all function together. Hello. I can't quite tell. Is that what's that New Year's Eve song? May all acquaintance be. No.
Yeah.
There's a name to it.
I know the melody, but I don't know the title.
Auld Lang Syne.
Who?
Auld Lang Syne. It's a Scottish.
Auld Lang Syne.
It's a Scottish hymn, and it's what's so perfect about this.
I don't.
Not just that it's January 3rd right now,
right.
But
yes,
that people are listening to this first, but it's about friendships, relationships, and you're thinking about the past, and you're wondering what you want to continue with in the future. Should we continue or not? And
Auld Lang Syne.
Yep.
Auld.
A.
I'm Scottish, and I did not know that.
Are you?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, mostly Scottish.
Now you know.
I'm a little bit of other
things.
Yeah, I'm a little bit of a mutt like most of us. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to a very exciting, at least we think, episode of the On Purpose Parents Podcast. Woo-hoo! Ladies and gentlemen, it is our 50th episode. This little podcast has been going for 50 consecutive episodes, much to the what's the word? Much to the
chagrin.
No.
Surprise?
I'm saying kind of that. I was going to say
surprise
to the credit of producer Chris.
Yes.
Because he is not allowed. There has not been a Wednesday, I don't believe, in the 50 that there hasn't been a new episode dropped on time every Wednesday. And so we're just plugging along. Everybody who is listening, thank you so much. Today, we just want to celebrate Chris. Producer Chris bought us a little 50th anniversary cake, which is
Looks
actually
delicious.
a Christmas cake. He got it on.
There's a Christmas tree on the cake.
He got it on clearance.
It was.
It was like Christmas clearance rack.
Driving over this morning.
But he got the right candles.
I need to get a
He got the
cake.
5-0 candle.
Those
Hold on. Just
okay.
Chris.
Maybe it's not a Christmas tree. Maybe it's just a pine tree.
Here's what I don't understand. I say this with great affection for producer Chris. Not knowing how much pressure it takes to produce this podcast. I don't understand any of it.
All the
What
equipment
I don't
set up.
understand is we went through all the effort. We have a 50th graphic. We went through all the effort to do a 50th celebration. But why didn't you just get a cake that said Happy 50th or something?
Yeah,
I don't.
I literally drew. I stopped at Ralph's and I'm looking.
He's
and I'm
a
like,
busy
God,
man,
they
Kurt.
don't have.
He has a lot of things to do and
But
going
this
on.
cake isn't like a day-old bakery. It's like a week-old bakery.
You know what? We're going to find out. When we eat it, we'll
It's
find
tres
out.
leches. Okay, the 3 milks cake, and it's good for a week after.
It's going to be amazing.
This cake is. Oh man.
It looks good.
I may not even taste it. I may not even taste it.
They didn't have the candles, right? And I was
Those are
thinking
nice,
they
I will
probably
say.
might not. So I went home and Tina, my bride, is like, "Hey, I still have the candles from your 50th birthday." So those are
You know what? I'm
getting
all
worse.
for reusing and repurposing
This
things.
is getting worse by the
By
moment.
the way, speaking of 50, and you mentioned behind us the graphic.
Yes.
You want to share who did this beautiful graphic behind us?
The people listening can't even
Yes.
see it, but if they're watching.
If they're watching.
Well, I made that graphic.
Kurt did it,
again,
everybody. Look
again,
at that.
Grace, to my point. Chris didn't even make the graphic. You would have thought he had time to get a 50th cake.
Okay.
I'm doing his job for him by making a graphic as if I'm not busy enough. Chris is Chris is very busy too. Chris, we just tease you, producer Chris. Pardon me for disrespecting you by not putting producer Chris in front. Well, everybody, enough of that.
About the cake.
Here's the thing. 2 of us out of the 3 in this room are in our 50s. And so what we've learned is turning 50 is a big deal. And there's a lot of wisdom in your 50s. So our hope with the podcast is that as this little podcast turns 50 episodes, that it'll just keep getting better with age.
Yeah.
That there'll be better wisdom, more wisdom, that those of you who have stumbled upon this podcast, either a friend recommended it to you, maybe you go to our church, maybe you just stumbled upon it because you Googled help, I'm a parent, and you scrolled 18 pages deep and found our podcast. It's certainly not listed number one on the help, I'm a parent type stuff. But however you found our podcast, what we hope is that it's been a little bit of a source of fun. Maybe we make you giggle a little bit as we enjoy life together, but mostly that in your parenting journey, whether you've listened to one episode or you're hardcore and you've listened to all 50, all 49, 50 heading into this one, we just hope that we've encouraged you in your parenting journey, that we've given you a few extra tools. We've given you a little bit of hope and help. We want to help you win in parenting. We know that parenting is tough. We know that good things hardly ever happen by accident. Intentionality is a big deal in parenting. And we just want to help you in your journey of raising your children to be interdependent, lifelong followers of Jesus who want to make a kingdom contribution, however that looks, the way God's wired them, the way God shaped them, the stuff in the world that interests them, that someday, early on, they'll begin to recognize that, and they will someday just be nudged going, how can I use the way God's wired me to make a contribution in this crazy, wonderful, but oftentimes confusing and definitely lost and hurting world that we find ourselves in.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's why we do the podcast.
Yeah. And today...
Quick question before. Can you hear Grace?
I can hear her fine.
And you can hear yourself? Okay.
You can't hear me?
It's me. No, it's something with this here. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
All right. All good. Well, today, as we are doing our 50th episode, what we were thinking about talking about was, and it kind of coincides really well with New Year's, the start of the year. Usually during this time, as parents and just people in general, we're very almost like anxious and wired to look ahead.
Right.
Like, what are our New Year's resolutions? What weight do I need to lose? What project do I need to accomplish? What task? What 20 things am
what new habits do I need to start?
And all of those things are really great reflection things to do. But one of the things that we feel is really important to embody as parents, but also just as people and for our own mental, emotional, even physical health, is to stop and to reflect and to be grateful for and celebrate what has happened in the past. And to reflect on how has God shown his faithfulness in your life.
Right.
And that is not always an easy thing to do, because it is easier to just keep rolling forward, spin on the hamster wheel. It is sometimes harder to sort of crank the brakes. Is that what it's called? Crank the brakes?
Push the brakes.
Push the brakes.
Tap the brakes.
Tap the brakes. Not crank.
Crank is another.
Is your arm.
Yeah. Well, and that's like
you're kind of sort of like getting something started.
Yes, it's the opposite
so
of
to
what
like
do the
press,
pump
the
the brakes.
brakes.
Do that.
Pump the brakes.
Yes. And to actually stop, that's very hard for us as people, to actually stop and say, well, how has this past year been?
Right.
What am I grateful for? And we wanted to do that and practice that and model that on today's episode podcast.
Awesome.
And looking
good.
back at our 50 episode history together. So
well, I like the wisdom in that, Grace. A lot of it has to do with how you're wired. My wife is much more wired to be reflective, and in all the right ways, she just runs life at a little bit slower pace, in all the right ways, than I do. And I really respect that, and I admire that about her.
Yeah.
Some of it's how she's wired, and some of it's she's been intentional because she sees a value in enjoying and remembering, and she's more apt to journal, all that kind of stuff than I am. So I like that as we jumpstart another year, that for most of our listeners, I think the majority of our listeners are already clicked into that mindset that you talked about of, okay,
what's next?
It's January 3rd. Boom, 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 boom.
Yes.
What are the goals for our family? What are the goals for work? All the things.
Yeah.
So we're going to just slow down ourselves in this podcast. And how are we going to do that? I mean, I'm not sure how.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the ways, but before we do that, how we're going to do that, just to kind of engage with that topic of what you just raised, it is for me, because you're saying it is easier for your wife than for you to reflect and to stop and get into that space. For me, mentally, I really like having those spaces where we can stop and reflect and look back.
Yeah.
But when I am in my to-do list mode, which is often, it's very hard. So I just want to encourage parents. It's not an easy thing. Like conceptually, like we could be all bought in. Like for sure, let's reflect. But it's like let's reflect for like 30 seconds,
right?
And then let's get to our to-do list because there's just so much. Yep. There's just so much going on. And parents, like you're busy. You got, so many things. You have to take care of yourself. Sometimes then you have to take care of your kids. I mean, there's just so much going on. But we do want to say that when you create that space to do that and to stop and to reflect, it just makes everything else that comes after better. And really, even biblically, so many times God has told his people, stop and remember.
Right.
Stop and remember.
Right.
Stop and remember.
Yeah.
So there's something there that we wanted to do. So one way that we thought we could do that in today's episode is just actually reflecting back and sharing with each other some memories. So I'll throw it out there, and Chris and Kurt and I can share, like, what is a memory or two over the past 50 episodes that sticks out to you, that you remember, or that is something that you don't want to forget. 50 episodes into the future, looking back, 100 episodes now. Yeah. Anyone want to go start first?
I mean, there's not like one particular thing that's my absolute favorite. There's a number of things that kind of stick out, and I think most of it has to do with two things. One is Kurt's reaction to things is hilarious to me. It's so good. The other thing would be I am getting to know you more, Grace, as we're sitting, as we talk and, through the episodes and stuff. And I just am so impressed with how just how real you are and how you work hard to study things and learn things. Mm-hmm. You're just a learner, and you're real, and you love sharing. And it's I think it's fantastic. So those are two of my favorite things.
Oh.
And also Kurt's Christmas shirt the week after Christmas and making fun of my Christmas cake.
I hear you. I only wear this shirt to Christmas services at the church, and that's about it. And apparently today, last episode, I was wearing it last episode.
This is the job of that shirt.
Gosh, Grace, it's such a great question as I reflect, right? And I'm pondering, like, what do I love about the show? And with Chris, I don't know if there's a moment that stands out. I don't even know if there's a favorite episode. I think what I love most about the show, and I don't know how well I can quantify this, but I do love what seems to be sort of a diversity of the audience. And, we don't hear a ton from listeners. We'll get emails once in a while. But we've got, and I think producer Chris has some of the stats, but we've got listeners in all different socioeconomic areas of the country, even some from other countries that listen to the podcast regularly, different stages of life, empty nester parents in the audience and brand new parents in the audience, and people who are following Jesus and people who aren't following Jesus. And I love that. I love that this podcast is just kind of reaching a wide variety of people. I love that. I love the diversity around this table. In the spirit of the diversity, right? I mean, Chris and I are very similar in a lot of ways, our age and all that kind of stuff, but we're such different dudes.
Yeah.
We're such different.
You're also a little bit older.
Producer Chris, like a year. Producer Chris will cry so easily in all the good way. Like, he's just such a
his heart is tender.
His heart is tender.
What is your heart?
My heart is not tender whatsoever. And Chris is warm with his affirmations, and Grace is so well read and well researched, and what she says has a level of truth to it, and you can quantify. And I just say whatever the heck comes off my mind. I don't, if somebody were to say to me, Kurt, how true is that? Is that really true? Half the time I'd be like, I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud. But that's the diversity, right? And to me, that's like when you look at Scripture and the Bible talks about the diversity of the body of Christ and His creation. And all of us are necessary and needed, and all the parts of the body, though very different, all function together. And the audience is very different. We're the three of us are very different, but all collectively, this little podcast is fun and I think helpful, and really I'm kind of proud of that.
Yeah, that's really special. Yeah, a couple memories that sticks out for me over the past 50. Well, one is
Canister of conundrums.
How did you know that?
Oh, no.
No.
Producer Chris,
No.
that is
Grace,
literally,
don't.
I wrote it in my little notes here. I said, the pot of perplexity. So that is so funny. I actually literally was going to bring this up. So for listeners who are super confused right now, we had a series of episodes. I don't remember which, early on.
It was all the interviews with people.
Where we had a lot of guest speakers and
parents in different stages of parenting.
Yes, different stages and ages and goals. And we were talking about that on purpose parent plan and had different guests come. And one of the icebreaker games we would do with our guests was have this bowl of would you rather questions. It's like a very fun, lighthearted game. And the very first time we brought out that bowl to play the game, producer Chris pressed that button and was like, here is what's coming. The pot of perplexity, the bowl of
do you remember
doom or something. And it was funny.
It was not Grace, it was not the bowl of doom, because that doesn't
rhyme.
That doesn't rhyme.
No, you're right. What did he say?
Oh, I don't know. Well, he sent us an email, if you'll remember. He sent us an email. He was so excited.
Yes.
It was the game was your idea. And producer Chris decided, well, we have to call it something, which I appreciate.
Yes.
I appreciate a good title as much as the next guy. He sent us an email with probably 20 different suggestions. The pot of
that
perplexity.
Were all alliterations.
The bowl. the container of confusion.
Conundrum. It was like conundrum. Yes. the something. Oh, we can't even remember.
The jar of jeopardy.
Yeah.
That's good. That's awesome.
Oh my goodness.
Those are so good.
And he would keep pressing it like he's doing right now. Anyway, that was one of my memories but that does tie into something I really appreciate about producer Chris is that he behind the scenes is so creative. He'll take any ideas that you have and he'll want to make it next level. And
who else would repurpose a Christmas cake as a 50th anniversary? That takes a level of creativity that I've never experienced before.
But all of the technology here, the setups, and I do remember like early on, and I was still just getting to know Chris, he would, after episodes, he would come and he would say, so what's one thing I could do better? What's one thing we can do better? And I was like always impressed with one, his energy, his behind the scene effort, but also just the desire to continue to have this podcast grow really with the heart to be a resource to parents. So that's
awesome.
One memory that I have.
Awesome.
The other memory that sticks out to me from the podcasts was actually when we were talking about junior high, and we were talking about that stage of being a cheerleader, the role. So the stage of when your kids are in the middle school period, and then our role as parents is we defined it as cheerleaders. So again, if parents are not familiar with this is part of the On Purpose Parenting Plan, and you can find those these ages and stages and roles and goals of parents on our website. But as we were talking about that, Kurt, you just kind of gave an illustration to parents of what does a cheerleader look like, and you went through this little short spiel on one of the episodes of like, hey, junior hires, this is the hardest, most awkward, transforming in a weird way phase for kids. And a lot of times we're hard on them, but what they really need is someone to say, look, you're doing your best. I'm so proud of you. I really admire who you are becoming. I'm here for you. And you did this whole thing. It was a lot better than what I'm doing right now. And I remember feeling like almost emotional. I was like, oh, that feels so uplifting and encouraging and actually almost healing that I was like, oh, if I was a middle schooler going through some crazy stuff and a lot of insecurities and figuring out who I am, like having a parent speak those affirmations to me would be so empowering. And so for me, even as part of, doing this podcast with you, Kurt and Chris, just like that, like I've been blessed by things that you have shared, and it has shaped my own inspiration for parenting. So that's definitely something I've really enjoyed. And just to kind of add on to you, Kurt, you have these like brilliant words of wisdom, but you also, and you're edgy, you tease a lot, but you also are so game to do whatever. I'll just share a story with our listeners. We had an event recently with pastors' wives, and there was a game, and the team that won, it was like the side of the room that won, we were like, what's your prize? And then suddenly out of the corner comes running this grown man dressed in a reindeer costume with a red nose button, running around throwing candy at the winners. And guess who that was?
Oh my gosh.
That was our very own Kurt here. So I would just say, Kurt is always game.
That's
and
great.
this was Rachel's event, his wife Rachel, and he was supporting her.
Yeah.
And it was just such a great example of like, oh, they're such a good team together. And also Kurt is so supportive of Rachel's ministry
Is true.
and how he will even dress in a one-piece reindeer costume.
Thank you.
Do you have video of that?
I do
or a
have
picture?
video.
Oh,
I do
send
have
it.
video.
I want to cut it
And then can you put it on the On Purpose Parent? Yeah, cut to it.
Yes.
Guys, watch it right here, Claire.
I'm going to try to do that. I want to learn how.
Well, thank you, Grace.
Yes.
Rachel used a saying or a mantra against me because for years and years and years I've been involved in youth ministry specifically, and one of the things we always say to each other, the volunteers, the staff, is, hey, you got to be willing to do anything for the bit. Like it's for the sake of the kids.
It's not about
summer
you.
camp. It's not about you. Anything for the bit. Which I say that as the leader of the ministry. I'm saying it to like 21-year-old interns and volunteers. Hey, God, come on, anything for the bit. Come on. What do you mean you don't want to?
Oh, so she called you out on that.
So she mentioned me dressing up as a reindeer. I was very hesitant. She said, hey, Kurt, anything for the bit. And as soon as she said that, I'm like, well, shoot.
You're
right.
like, I'm in. I'm all in. And I had asked Kurt, it's like, did you was there like a room back there? Because he popped out of nowhere. I was like, did you change? He's like, no, I had to change across the campus outside in the public men's room, and then just walk across in his reindeer costume. So, but I really appreciate that. And and other things, I think that one of the other things that I wanted to share that you shared that has stuck to me and Sam, which in a very relevant way, is you said when your kids were entering that teen adolescent phase, that you and Rachel made a pact that said, anytime now our kids ask us to do something with us, parents, we're going to say yes. Yeah. So if they invite us to the movie, it's like, you know what? We'll be there. We're going to make this happen. And the idea of it being many times they're going to push you out in different spaces, your kids. So when they do invite you in, and it may not be in a space where you're wanting to say yes or you're distracted at that moment, but at this age, you would be missing out if you are only engaging with your kids on your timetable and when it's convenient for you or when it's time to connect versus just being ready. And I think that Sam and I talked about that afterwards, and we were like, we want to be present for our kids in that way as they're entering that stage. And so I just think I really appreciate this space of this podcast where it's not just us talking, but talking to each other and engaging with, our parent audience out there, and just creating that space where we can reflect and think about parenting. Good. It's been really, really helpful and uplifting for me, even as a parent, and just even seeing and being inspired by how hard producer Chris works and how dedicated he is to the ministry and just the heart behind it. That really is the engine that's driving everything. That, yeah, it's been super fun. And it's just been a great ride for 50 episodes.
For 50 episodes. And we're not slowing down. We've got some awesome plans for now moving out of reflection and into what is in store for the new year. In some ways, more the same. We're going to move into a new studio at some point. Mm-hmm. We have some other topics and little tweaks and changes along the way. But if you love this podcast, we're gonna keep chugging along. We have no plans to stop, so keep sharing it with your friends. The other day, I spent maybe an hour and a half just listening to bits and pieces of other parent podcasts. There's a lot of parent podcasts out there. There's a lot, faith-based, non-faith-based, and they all have one thing in common that we don't. They're all very tight. Very professional. They get right down to business, and they're really good at what they do. Ours is a little bit loose, a little quirky, and that's what I love about it. I love that we're the outlier of parent podcasts, and hopefully that is what makes the podcast enjoyable for our listeners. Is it's sort of like they're just sitting around the table with us, and we're just talking about life and the journey of parenting together. And man, we're excited. 50 episodes, more to come. Producer Chris, why don't you come over here, cut the old Christmas 3 milks. What's it called? 3 milks? 3 leches? Tres leche.
Yeah, and as producer Chris comes, we want to encourage parents, as you are entering this new year, this stopping and reflection is something you can do with your own families as well.
Yeah, sorry, Grace.
No.
Grace is trying to be, wow, you're going to, holy blowtorch.
Yay, look at the fire.
Tres leche. Everybody, thanks for joining us. Oh, wait. Oh,
we get to actually eat it.
Look at this. We've got paper plates. We've got napkins from Cane's.
We got Raising Cane napkins.
Panda Express plates. This episode brought to you by Cane's and Panda Express.
And Christmas tree cakes.
My napkin almost caught on fire by that flame. Woo. Everybody, thanks so much for watching.
Happy reflecting with your families.
Look at those gold spoons, man.
Look at that.
That's unbelievable.
They unscrew, too.
What are you talking about? The spoons unscrewed?
Thank you.
Wait a second. Wait. So what?
Oh, wow.
So you can replace? I don't understand. Are they just? They're not. What's happening?
I sense hair on my arm.
Is this gonna? Is the show
start
over?
off the fire alarm?
No, it's still on.
Bye, everybody.
Bye,
Thanks for joining
everybody.
us. We'll see you soon.
Happy 50th.
Happy New Year's.
Happy New Year's. All right, let's go for it. Cheers.